Okay, this is an instructional video on paper piecing. We're going to start with template G. As you can see, I like to write what colors I'm using on each square. It just helps me stay organized. I already have my 4 pieces of fabric here ready to go. I have my 2 different sizes of add-a-quarter rulers. You can make do with just one, but I like to have the little one for the majority of the time and the long one just when I need it. Before you begin, I would suggest setting your stitch length on your sewing machine to a 2. That way, when you rip your paper off the back, you don't pull your stitches loose. I printed my templates on regular old printer paper, so you can do that if you'd like. The paper made for paper piecing will tear off easier. It's also easier to see through. So that's just if you want to buy that template paper, feel free, but you can do it with regular printer paper. So let's get started here. We're just going to start off square number 1. You can see G1. Okay, and we're going to just put a little dab of glue on that. And then we're going to take our first square of fabric and put it over that. And we just want to make sure that when we do, we're covering our seam allowance on both sides. This whole white edge is our seam allowance. These black lines are the sew lines. So we're going to do that. We're going to make sure we completely cover it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to fold on the black line in between spaces number 1 and number 2. Okay, so you can see our fabric is forward. We folded on the black line. I'm just going to turn that over. So now we're looking at the back of our fabric. I'm going to turn mine around because I'm very right-handed. We're looking at the back of our fabric and our piece that we folded back. And we're just going to take our ruler, line it up right there where you folded that piece of paper. And you're going to cut right here along the edge of the ruler. See, we just cut that right off. And what that does, that gives us a guide. That's where we're going to line up our next pieces with that piece of fabric where we just cut it. So you fold this back out straight. You can see what that looks like. We'll take piece of fabric number 2, put that right sides together. And you want to just make sure that your piece of fabric is long enough that it covers your seam allowance on both edges. I'm going to pull mine a little bit more this way. Okay, so we're all lined up and we're going to take this over to the sewing machine. And you can see we have it just as we had it over there. We're lined up with that orange fabric underneath. We're going to flip this upside down. And we're going to sew on the line that we just folded. You can see your black line through your paper. And it's also the line you just folded. So just sew straight along that crease mark you made. And then when we flip that back over, bring that piece of blue fabric down. And as just a double check, you just want to make sure it covers your G2 square all the way. As you can see on mine, just barely missed over here. I'm not going to worry about that because it'll catch in my next seam allowance, but you want to be really careful not to do that. So it's a good opportunity to learn there. That's another reason the measurements I gave you in the instructions for cutting your fabric are for the 11-inch template, but you can go ahead and use them for the smaller. You can go ahead and use them for the smaller templates because sometimes when your fabric is really close to the right size, you'll wind up ripping a lot of seams because you get them like this, just a hair short on a corner. So sometimes it's just easier to use a bigger piece of fabric. So now that we've got piece 2 attached, we're going to move on to piece 3. And what that means is we're going to fold on the next line, the line between number 2 and number 3. We're going to fold along that line. So you can see this is our fabric up, our paper folded back. We're going to flip that over. So now our fabric is down, our fabric is face down, and our folded back piece of paper is looking up at us. We can see 3 and 4. We're going to take our ruler and line it up with that edge again. And we're going to cut right along the edge of the ruler again. Paper piecing does waste quite a bit of fabric. That's just kind of the nature of the beast. Okay, so when we fold our paper back straight, you can see that we have two pieces. This is now our edge to line up our next piece of fabric. So we have piece of fabric number 3. I'm trying to turn it where you can see it. This one is really close in size for me. So what I like to do as a double check is like kind of when you lay it here, fold it back this way just to make sure it's going to cover everything. And just as a little tip, if you get it really, really close, because when you get to flipping it back and forth like that, sometimes it's easy to actually move it a hair left or right. So what I like to do is when I put it about 1/4 inch, make sure it's covering all the way around. See, I'm not quite making it over here. So I need to move it this way a little. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a small mark right here so that when I flip this over to line it up, I can see that that piece needs to hit that blue mark when I line it up so that I know I have it enough, but my directions left and right far enough. Okay, and then we're going to take this to the sewing machine. Okay, so our piece is just as we had it over there. Our fabric's right sides together. Our template is facing up. We're going to flip it over again. Try not to let any of that move when you flip it. And again, we're going to sew on the line that we just folded. You can see it through your paper. Okay, you pull that out, you see when we flip it back over. Increase that. So you can see where I was talking about, it came up just a little bit short over here on this piece. That's going to get, when I sew this whole piece to its next piece, that will get you up in a seam allowance. So I'm not going to worry about it, but you do want to try to avoid that. Okay. So we're going to just repeat as we did before. Now we're going to fold our line between pieces 3 and 4. Once you kind of get the hang of it, it gets a lot easier. Once you kind of get used to the folding, trimming, sewing. So fabric's right side up, paper folded back, we're going to turn it over. You can see we have our fabrics are now face down. Our piece of edge is folded back. All we can see this time now is piece number 4. And I'm going to use my bigger ruler this time because that's a longer line. And we're going to line up our ruler right along that where our paper is folded. Cut that off. And then fold our template back out straight. You can see what that looks like. And that gives us our line to line up our next piece. So, fabrics right sides together. I made sure this one's plenty long enough that I don't have to worry about it. That's just a suggestion. Cut your pieces a little big. It really saves you a lot of trouble in the long run. So we're all lined up. We're going to flip it over. Again, so right along that line that we just creased. You can see when we fold our paper back over, increase that. Okay, so we have all of our pieces attached now. You can see we have all of our pieces attached. We're just going to trim this up. So lay all your fabrics face down so that you can see your paper. And we're just going to trim right along the edges of the paper. Now you can see that we have a completed G. And then you'll, of course, before you sew together, I would go ahead and rip the paper off each piece individually before you go to putting the whole thing together. But I'll also show you a quick video on assembling the entire block once you get all of your pieces completed.